Well, hello, everybody. Mike Townsend here for American Cycling Network. I have a special guest today. He's at the bottom of our screen, the famous, the infamous, the sprinter, Jason Van Art Vance. And of course, our coach, Tamara, our elite coach, and everybody knows her. But we're going to have just a little chat today. And Jason's going to ask a few questions. I'm going to ask a few questions. And Tamara has given us some of her time to just ask her anything. And so nothing's off the table when it involves cycling, working out, diet, exercise. All of this is just going to come out. Jason and I have been talking about dropping some weight, so I'll get us started and kick this off. And having come back from the Senior Olympics and seeing some of the guys that were 18 pounds lighter than me, a year older than me, same height. And Tamara, one of them mentioned intermittent fasting. Jason kicked that to the curb pretty quick. Intermittent fasting, where you eat one meal a day. So this guy had taken 3 years off, and we're actually going to record a video of him later today. But he had taken 3 years off, got up to 225. He got down to 175, and then he was in the 160s for the two races that he did. So, kind of give us some. How do you if I'm at 183, I want to be at 175 before my September 6th ride. How do I do that without losing muscle? And how does a person lose weight without putting it right back on? Because you and I have talked off camera about diets, and we know they don't work. People really need to learn a lifestyle of how to eat. And so tell us how that works.
Well, I mean, all diets do work. That's the reality. They do, and they're very short term and they're not sustainable, right? So it is about, having to make lifestyle changes, but then you also have to consider the fact that your ultimate goal isn't just to lose weight. You want to be able to perform as well. And so, you need a certain amount of fuel in order to perform. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is, everybody goes into restriction kind of a mode, and then the performance tanks. And I think, you've seen that yourself,
Yeah.
where, you've cut out certain foods and you weren't able to perform properly. So
Yeah.
I can't stress enough, like we get very hyper focused on weight, which is your weight on the scale. That's just saying what your body weighs. That's bone, that's muscle, that's water, blood, organs, it's everything, right?
Yeah.
And it can fluctuate, and it can fluctuate day to day, and it can fluctuate from morning to night. Now, the most accurate way to keep track of that is to weigh yourself in the morning. You get up, you go to the washroom, you weigh yourself naked. That's going to kind of give you a little bit more accurate before you start ingesting fluids and
Yeah.
foods and everything else. But it's about more about what you eat,
Right.
and the choices that you keep, that you take in. So, keep your protein up. You want to make sure that you're getting enough protein because that's muscle sparing. That's also helping with the repair process,
Yeah.
because what's happening when you're training is you're ripping up the muscles, and then they're protecting themselves, by in the repair process by growing stronger. And so your protein is going to support that. You need to support your training with carbohydrates. They're not the enemy, but you need to be very focused on single ingredient type complex carbs, rice and sweet potatoes, those kinds of oatmeal, those kinds of carbs. Anything that's refined and the more processed it is going to be higher in calories for the volume that you're going to eat. And then, of course, supporting your carbohydrates with fibrous type carbohydrates like your vegetables.
Right.
And then there has to be a certain amount of fats in your diet too. And those are like your healthy fats, like olive oil, avocado, flax, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And so your carbohydrates, if you're trying to drop weight, if you try and center them around your training.
Hmm.
So, if you make them more like your pre and your post and your intra, and then avoid them at the other times. But if you're going to avoid your complex carbs at the other times, you should still be getting in your fibrous carbs and your fats with your protein.
Okay. Interesting.
That makes sense.
Yes, it does. And so I was in the gym several years ago, and I asked this guy who, he was ripped. He looked like he was about 50. And I said, "Hey, how do I get rid of this waistband?" And all he said was, "That's too many birthdays." So the question I have, and I'll bring this picture up of me and Tim Ballinger. You guys can see, he had, I have this nice little, area around my stomach, and his is flat at a year older than me. And I'm just perplexed. How do you as a 57-year-old, how do I do that? How do I get down to where I'm lower body fat? I guess is what I'm trying to get, 2 or 3% body fat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here's the difference. So let's start with breakfast. You could have eggs, toast, eggs and toast and butter, and you would have probably a lot more calories, and it's not really doing anything for your body
Okay.
if you were to switch that to egg whites and oatmeal,
Okay.
for example, which is going to your complex carbohydrates are going to, they take longer to burn in your
Right.
body. So your body burns carbohydrates first,
Right.
but it'll burn the sugars and the processed stuff first, and
Right.
then it's longer to burn stuff like the oatmeal and the sweet potato and that kind of thing. And then it burns protein next and it burns fats last. So it's a matter of your food choices, what you're
I see.
eating. So there's a lot of dependence on bread type products. If you eliminate those and replace those kinds of things with rice and, sweet potato, oats,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. I have to keep repeating that because that's your
Okay.
most bang for your buck. Where, fruits like banana and
Hmm.
uh, those kinds of things. So it's the choices that you make, Mike.
Okay.
And with the choices that you make, you get more food volume for
Right.
less
I
calories,
see.
right? So, for example, when you think about having, say, two or three eggs with two pieces of toast and butter, you're getting a lot of your calories from fats there. You've got your fats in your eggs. You got 15 grams of fats just from egg yolks if you have three eggs. And then
Oh,
if you're using 2 tablespoons of butter, you've got another, probably 200 calories there from that on top of it, and two slices of bread. It's not really going to last you as long. If you were to switch that out for egg whites, you've got a massive volume with,
right.
oatmeal that you could put some flax in. You're going to be eating probably half to two-thirds of the calories and having a lot more food volume than if you had the eggs and toast.
I see.
So it's
Okay.
about what you're eating.
I got you. That's interesting. Well, good stuff, Jason. What do you
Yeah, just following up on that. I think what I'm hearing you say is because your body absorbs and eats up, the sugary parts of your diet early. It's okay to drink a big Coke and eat a Rice Krispie bar before you go out and ride a long ride, right?
Jason.
I mean, that's what I'm hearing. Is that not what you're saying? Mike, because Mike's against
Um,
Coke. He tells me that you
Coke?
say it's the devil, and
So no, not before you go out. No, we use those products like, you'll see them at the feed stations, right? When you're in a
yeah.
big long endurance type race, you're gonna have the Cokes and the simple sugars there. Those are things that you want to quickly get into your muscle while you're burning it all. But you want those complex carbohydrates in before you go out, about 2 hours before. And then those are stored as glycogen in the liver and in the muscles, right? So then the liver is pushing it into the muscles too. So no, you don't want your Coke before, you want it in.
Got it, got it, got it. Hey, so now in all seriousness, I am curious, because I'm trying to lose about 10 more pounds sometime in the very near future. In doing so, I want to make sure I lose fat, not muscle. So how can I, besides just looking in the mirror, or besides, feeling it, how can I make sure that I'm not doing that? Obviously, diet is a huge, huge part of that. Um, but I don't want to put myself in a position where I don't feel good when I'm riding, right? So what's the magic mix as far as, dieting and exercise and sleep and making sure I'm doing all those things? And is there a process for me to gauge whether I'm on track or not
Yeah,
besides
so
the scales?
definitely. So you want to be taking in protein, and a little bit of protein throughout your whole day. Now, there's various formulas for how much protein you should be taking in. We used to say 1 gram of protein per pound of what of your weight, but that's not what we want. We want that for 1 pound per your body weight of lean body weight. So you have to take the fat component out of it, the fat that you're storing component out of it. For someone like you, I would say about 150 grams of protein per day, but you want to split that stuff up. So, four
Breakfast,
to
lunch,
five times meals per
yeah,
day. I call them all meals, whether you want to call them
yeah.
breakfast, snack, lunch, whatever. Um, like I said, complex carbohydrates like the oatmeal, like the rice, those kinds of things
Mhm.
before training, after training.
Hmm.
You can eliminate them later in your day. You don't need complex carbohydrates sitting, in because that's energy, right? You don't need complex carbohydrates when you're going to bed.
Right.
So, you could focus more of just having like the vegetables and the protein, like a big salad or steamed vegetables with some form of protein. But you got to watch all these things that really add up, right? So, if you're having chicken that is breaded, for instance, that's going to be a lot higher in calories than, having a baked chicken breast or a barbecued chicken breast, right? And a lot of things like salad dressings, can be very, very heavy. So you want to watch stuff like that. So you really have to focus on if you were to go grocery shopping and you think about that, the grocery store, that outer perimeter of that grocery store, that's all, those single ingredient type foods, right? And really focus on foods without a label. Or if it has a label, like rice, for example, the only ingredient on there is rice. It's when you start buying these processed foods, that's what shoots you in the foot. Is what will stop that. And I hate to use weight loss. I like to call it fat loss. Because I mean, I coach people that step on stage in bodybuilding, right? I can get someone down, they might not be losing any weight on the scale, and they're getting leaner and leaner and leaner and leaner. So
Hmm.
don't always focus on what that scale says.
Sure. That makes great sense. And then do you have apps that you like to track that, or is it just a common sense thing? Like you said, don't be eating crazy compound things late at night before you go to bed.
There are some very, very good apps. A lot of my clients use one called MyFitnessPal. Uh,
Hmm.
Now, there's a free and a paid version for it, but the free version is quite good because you can search various foods and it will track all of your proteins and your carbs and whatnot. But you have to be aware that there's some things, for example, I'll use oatmeal as an example. Um, in a half a cup of serving of oatmeal, you're going to get about 25, 30 grams worth of carbs. That's dry measure, but it's also got a little bit of fat in it, about 3 grams, and it's probably got a little bit of protein, about 3 to 4 grams. I kind of ignore that kind of stuff, but these apps will track every single macronutrient that's in it. So those are just things to be aware of. And then, of course, it'll give you your total calorie content as well. So yeah, MyFitnessPal is a good one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, because I sometimes, when I get in the process, I'm in a good system, and then, I'll truck on 3 or 4 days, and I'll just be like, man, I am so hungry. And, just one night, just kill everything I've tried to do the past, week.
But that's where most people fail, right? Is because they don't actually, they don't, they just think that deprivation and starvation is the only way to go, when in fact it's not. When in fact, just changing your food choices, you can eat like a tremendous amount of quantity of food and never feel hungry. And that makes
Mhm.
a whole difference. So it's not calories so much as what you're eating.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. So you're saying you don't have to necessarily count calories. It's
Not, yes, but no. You
Yeah.
should really be focused more on the macros that you're taking in, your macronutrients and your
Okay.
proteins and your carbs and your fats.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, obviously, the calories at the end of the day do
Yeah.
really matter,
Mhm.
but it's an argument that I had with someone, not really an argument, but it was an eye opener, I guess, for lack
Mhm.
of better words, that was using, say, for example, Weight Watchers, right? So Weight Watchers have made a huge, marketing. I mean, they were very, very popular and very successful because they said, all you have to worry about is points, right? And this is this many points, and this is this many points. And as long as stay within those points for the day, you're going to lose weight. And they're right, you will, but
Mhm.
it's not sustainable. And then, but people don't want to give up chips and cake and donuts and whatnot. And so what ends up happening is they save their points. So they don't eat real food. And
Mhm.
at the end of the day, they might have had three donuts, but they met their points for the day, but they're starving to death. So all
Yeah.
it does is set them up for failure.
Yeah. Oh
It
yeah.
doesn't
Yeah,
um
that makes sense.
life skills and nutrition skills.
Yeah. So, Jason, do you have a question that you want to ask? If not, I can fire one at her.
Yeah, so I've started to do a little bit of weight training. Do you have specific weight training exercises you think are just ideal for cyclists more than others?
Absolutely. So it depends where you are in your season. So like right now, maybe you're competing and you're racing and whatnot. So we have to be careful of how much lower body that we're putting in there. But in your off season, for example, I would say twice a week minimum at the gym. And one of those weeks should be a heavier kind of a leg day, squats, lunges,
Mhm.
split squats, Romanian deadlifts, working on the hamstrings, working on the glutes, working on the quads. A lot of those kinds of things. We want to work on the glute med, which is kind of in the upper glute. That's a lot of your power is coming from there. But I can't stress enough how much you need to support your core. Planking is probably one of the best things you can do, all different variations. So, regular forearm planks, side planks, even doing a side plank with a clamshell where you've got like kind of a band around your legs and you're on a side plank and you're working the glute med. It's phenomenal because when you're on the bike, your power transfer is a huge deal. And that core needs to be tight because ultimately your legs should be moving like pistons, right? You don't want to be doing swaying in your upper body. That needs to be rock solid. But then you've also got to be thinking about, you guys both like to climb, and, I mean, climbing is a part of cycling. And, getting up out of the saddle, you need to be able to hold on to those handlebars. So you really want to be working a lot of your rear delts. So doing things like face pulls, with a rope or with a band, even like push-ups and tricep dips and stuff like that. So you want to be incorporating those kinds of things.
Cool. Interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. So, one of the questions I had was pre 50-mile ride. Jason and I are going to ride this Saturday. We're going to have some intervals in. What are some best nutritional tips pre-ride and then after we ride? Because I know there's times where maybe if I didn't get enough carbs during the ride, uh, I will just crave carbs. It's like when
Mhm.
it's weird. And sometimes it can be carbs in the form of sugar, like a chocolate chip cookie that the girls bake, or brownies that they make, or it's like I want something sweet. So can you kind of speak into pre-ride, post-ride? What's, most important, of course, and then what are some of the best foods that you can eat pre-ride and post-ride?
Okay. So your fuel is your glycogen,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so we want to have glycogen stored in the muscle before you go out.
yeah.
So the glycogen is stored in the muscle and in the liver. And so I usually say about 2 hours before is when you want to have good complex carbohydrates.
Okay.
Okay. Then when you get into the ride, it's about, you talked about pre and post, but we got to talk about intra as well. Because in the ride, you need to be ingesting carbohydrates while you're riding. I typically like to throw those in every 30 to 45 minutes, never longer than that. Now, those are going to be your quick release carbs. Okay, so you're going to benefit a lot more from things like the gels, the carbohydrate powders, those kinds of things, immediate uptake to the muscles. Powders are great because they bypass the stomach, they go right to the muscles. Post ride is when you're going to want to replace you. This is when you want your protein. Okay. So this is starting the whole repair process. But this is the time where the complex carbohydrates are very important again. This is where you're replacing all the lost glycogen and you're getting yourself ready for the next time. So you want those complex carbohydrates before 2 hours. You want the simple ones during every 30 to 45 minutes. And I mean, we try and work on, for men like you, being up around 120 grams of carbs per hour while you're riding. I mean, that's a process. You have to test these things and make sure it's not causing any GI stress. And then post ride with you got about an hour and a half window where you want to take in that protein. A lot of people like to take in like a whey isolate type shake at that point because it's nice and easy. And then follow it up with a meal where you've got some complex carbohydrates in there. So you got to replace that lost glycogen. Oh, I can't hear you.
Yeah,
Sorry, Mike.
Mike, I can't hear you. Hey, while Mike's trying to figure out his technical difficulties, do you have favorite gels that you like during rides? Are there some that you think are like top tier, or are you even allowed to say something like that?
Oh no, I can say anything. I typically will use whatever is available to me when I'm on a race. I don't use gels on a daily basis. I use them as a last resort when I'm racing. I don't really care for gels personally myself. I prefer to get my carbohydrates from a cyclic dextrin, which I
Liquid.
find in a product called Aminocore, not Aminocore, Carbion by Allmax. And I mean, I'm not sponsored by them in any way, but they've been around for many, many years. And it's a product that uses cyclic dextrin. And so it completely bypasses the stomach and it's immediate uptake into the muscles. And I prefer to get my carbs that way.
That's awesome.
Can you
Yeah.
guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Yeah. Uh, any more questions, Jason?
I'm good. It's been great to talk to you, Tam. I appreciate all your insight and just the
Yeah.
way that you take care of your people.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, and we'll have to do a part two of this and maybe include Dallas and some other folks, but we appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. And guys, we'll put the description on how you can get in touch with Tamara if you need more information. We'll put it in the description of the video. But thank you guys.
Thanks.